Welcome to the Longevity Protocol with Dr. Cristina Bosch and Dr. John A. Robinson. We'll be your guides to uncovering the secrets to optimal health, better sex, and happiness. From debunking aging myths to exploring the science behind what it means to live the Longevity Protocol, we'll dive into a wide range of topics. So, get ready for an exhilarating journey in what it means to live well and feel your very best at any age. You look like you've been working out more.
Yeah?
I think so. Yeah,
I have been.
You have been. Right? Tell me about that. Tell everybody about your recent experiences and the results you're getting and all of that.
Well, I mean, it's by no means recent, right? I've been working out since always, but I think that this is the first time in a decade where I'm out of baby making mode.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really about muscle gains, not fat loss, even though thankfully I've been having some trimming up. And I've been really focused on the protein. I've been doing the NAD, started testosterone, which I had never used before. And the muscle shots, I feel like that's been...
Those muscle shots, the high potency amino acid
correct
injections.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Thanks.
Yeah, no,
it's
you
nice
look
to see that it
fantastic.
looks different.
And aside from the fact that you just look great, like some arms going on there,
Right.
I think it just plays well into today's episode.
Uh-huh.
So we're talking about body image and sexuality and how our perception of body image plays into our sexuality, how it plays into our sexual response even. And that's something I think we see with a lot of our patients. They come in and they share what's maybe going on with that.
Yeah. In fact, this topic was proposed to us by a patient of mine who's just great. And I said, she's just been an amazing supporter of us from day one. She has transformed her life.
How has she transformed?
When she started seeing me, and I don't know, I think I'd want to say it's a decade perhaps that we've been working together. She was significantly overweight. Her autoimmune thyroid issues hadn't been diagnosed. They hadn't been identified. Obviously, her perimenopausal condition hadn't been identified, hadn't been addressed. And in the time that we've been working together, again,
perimenopausal at that time, because now she would be probably she menopausal.
She's in her late 40s.
Oh, okay. So she'd still be on that.
Yeah,
edge.
she's not postmenopausal at all. And I think in part because of all the changes she's made, she's really keeping her vitality and her youthfulness in play. But talking about body image, she brought it up because she's had such a transformation metabolically, physiologically, physically. But I think in her perspective, how it has changed her relationship with her husband, with herself, with even her children and her grandchildren.
Interesting.
The fact that she is really coming into that sense of, I feel good, I feel worthy. And yes, there is a lot of worth that we tie into how we feel and vice versa.
How did it play into her, you said children and grandchildren, what way?
Well, I think one of the things we'll talk about is the relationship, especially for women, the relationship between feeling confident and feeling in love with yourself, how that is such a positive lesson for boys and girls, but definitely for the girls in your life. So for your daughters and then for your granddaughters.
I see.
Because we share her. Anyways,
the kids,
the middle one, the girl in the middle.
Right.
Alessandra. She says, every time I tell Abuela that she looks beautiful, Abuela goes, really? And she goes, I hate it when she says that.
No. She wants her to
She wants her to be like, yeah, I do.
Of course I am. Yeah.
So that goes, and my mom has a very good sense of self-esteem. So imagine, it really does affect the people around you when you are demonstrating your self-worth.
Alessandra already is, she's fabulous.
Yeah, she knows it.
Fabulous. That's the topic today. So let's talk about what the summary here and the things that we're going to talk about today. Let's just go through. So we're going to talk about what is positive body image. How do we define that? What are the results of a negative body image, particularly on sexual function? What do we do about it? And then including some of the strategies and best practices for that. So what is a positive body image?
Well, what it isn't is related to how a person actually looks.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's amazing. So
it's how they feel.
It's how they
their
feel.
Their perception of that.
It's how they feel and how they feel about the way they look.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I know that, especially in my youth, I would have seen someone perhaps that was a little bit not in as great shape as I think they should have been in when they had, all their meats out.
But they're all
and I would have been
glory.
like,
yeah.
But look at the way she works. Like, good for her,
Mm-hmm.
And you remember that satirist? I'm not sure how you pronounce that word. Emma Bombeck, satirist. How she would say, if I knew in my 30s what I know in my 60s, I would have ran around naked.
Naked all the time. Yeah.
Right. So positive body image actually doesn't have that much to do with how you do look, assuming you genuinely love the way you look.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And, it's interesting you say all that. And I think about, again, we're in this interesting day and age where the concepts of beauty also have been, let's say, a little bit skewed. I mean, I think what you're talking about is a general moderation of how we would approach it. But
that's why I said genuinely.
Genuinely, exactly. So there's like this thing now where people are getting into maybe even an unhealthy situation and saying, come on, there has been a multitude of these, call them influencers, again, for the lack of a better word, that are very, very obese, let's say. And they are, many of them are dead. I just saw there was like 3 or 4 of them that I saw a list of that were out there saying, it's great, this is awesome. And they're not with us anymore because they've died from their morbid obesity.
Which is an illness.
Because it was an illness and they weren't recognizing that. So there's obviously extremes to what we're saying here. And there's also functionality of things. And we're going to get into that in terms of what goes on sexually. And then some of those things need to be understood and addressed and know that you can address it and you can begin to fix it.
Yeah, I would argue, and I don't know this is the place to state this, but
sure, it's the place to state it. Go ahead.
I would argue that if you're morbidly obese or anorexic, you don't love the way you look and you don't love yourself because those are illnesses. And those are illnesses that in large part are present because the choices you are making for the temple that is your body is not self-serving. It's self-sabotaging.
Well, some of these definitions, let's get a little bit into the technicality behind this.
Okay.
A positive body image would include body appreciation, very much to what you were just saying there. Body acceptance and love. So now we're talking about a general understanding and appreciation for who you are.
Yeah. And the difference between the things you can change and can't change. Like, I wish I was taller. I wish I was shorter. Whatever.
Blue eyes, brown eyes, whatever.
Yeah.
People, the grass is always greener with a lot of these types of concepts. And I'd say for men, but probably particularly for women. Broadly conceptualizing beauty. And we were talking about this before. What exactly does that mean to you? Broadly conceptualizing beauty. To be able to have, as it is related to positive body image, what does that mean to you?
I'm not sure if there's a definition attached to this because I have two opinions about that. Broadly conceptualizing beauty, on the one hand, means recognizing that beauty can be found in all different looks.
Right.
That this isn't really a feature-specific thing, which we were teaching the girls, right? The other day when we were looking at that video, which we should talk about.
Which one?
The video of mastication and breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the negative side of that is that when we are broadly accepting things like obesity as beautiful
or anorexia
exactly, or anorexia, we are giving it permission to exist instead of recognizing it as an illness. When we have plus size mannequins as the primary mannequin in the children's section, what we're saying is kids are just getting fatter.
Right. It's
but they're still cute. I mean, that's wrong. I feel like that inflection that I just said, I've heard myself use so many. That's wrong. I'm not judgy though.
It's totally wrong, but I'm not judging.
Anyway.
Adaptive appearance investments. I think this is really important.
The broadly conceptualizing beauty, is that phrase intended to be the positive, the negative, or however one takes it?
I think what they're saying is to see beauty in many different things,
Mm-hmm.
but particularly yourself. But I think if people do not have a broad conception of beauty, then it's all narrow based on social norms. Even sometimes the social norms can have the negative where it's putting it into too small of a box. Yeah. Then people compare to that, and then they don't have this overall. It's like seeing beauty in everything, and that's the way I look at it. There's so many different things that can be beautiful. So it sounds like we're kind of talking out both sides of our mouth here.
I don't think we are. I
but
think, like in legal documents where it says henceforth to be known as blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the purposes of this podcast, when we're talking about beautiful, we have to assume that it means healthy. Because I really don't think that anything that's unhealthy is beautiful in nature. You have a wilting flower. That's not beautiful.
Okay. It's interesting you say that. So I was reading something
romantic. There may be poetry in it, but it's beautiful.
There was something on Medscape, and I'll let everybody know this because I think it really plays into what you just said there as it relates to obesity. They're now calling it healthy fat, meaning they're fat, but it's a certain kind of health. And now what they mean by that is that they do not present metabolically unstable. They don't have high blood pressure.
Okay.
They don't have high cholesterol. Their blood sugar, all of these things are actually their A1C. Everything is normalized, but they're technically overweight. They technically have a high percentage of body fat.
Okay. But I mean, don't we look at people like Marilyn Monroe in today's standards and say in today's standards, she would have been seen as fat?
No, well, yes, maybe there for a while, but I think the pendulum had swung to where, no, she would not at all been seen as fat.
Because I mean, she was definitely meatier than what we see on the runways today. And she was gorgeous. I mean, Sophia Loren, same thing. Like these are luscious body types.
Yeah. So being broadly open about.
So healthy fat is healthy.
I think it's maybe it means not being as critical with the world. And if you're not as critical with the world, you're maybe not as critical to yourself. And that's what I think that might mean.
Okay.
Well.
I'll take it.
Okay. Adaptive appearance investment, working on your look. I really think that's important. I think, working with what you have, having a look. They talk about, with guys, with men and masculinity. And I think it's one of the things that men should figure out. What's your look? How are you going about it? Are you gonna have a beard, not have a beard? What are you gonna do with your hair? How are you gonna generally dress? Have a look and kind of stick with that. And that shows a sense of personal self-esteem. And it also enhances your self-esteem.
But I mean, one's look could be eclectic, but still it's a commitment.
Whatever it's a commitment towards a look, and you're thinking about it.
Right.
And there's a thoughtful investment that way. Inner positivity and having a good inner voice that's supportive. I mean, this is obviously a deeper psychological concept for a lot of people. I always ask patients when they talk about their inner voice, I say, is it a male or a female? Because a lot of time, in other words, is it your mother or your father? Is it both? Yeah.
Really? I just think it's me.
Well, maybe. I don't know if you have. Okay, let's talk about your inner critical voice. Is it really critical? Is it someone sitting there yelling at you, or is it just you critiquing a situation and assessing?
Well, I think my mom and dad had very similar perspectives on almost everything. So, I mean, I'm not particularly hard on myself, but I have a high self-standard. I guess those things can go hand in hand because they do. I have a high standard. I have a strong drive. I have high ambition. Yeah. But I'm also because I recognize that I work so hard, I don't beat myself up if I fail.
A lot of what you're describing there is more your high standard, you move towards what you're thinking and needing, versus a critical voice for some people is very much this yipping thing that they're moving away from because they're being told what is wrong, and they have that kind of voice.
I have very constructive criticism in my mind.
You love yourself. Okay, so yes, having that type of supportive, and there's ways to even move through that for some people. And just the first place is recognizing where's that voice coming from, and then trying to work through that. And then finally, filtering information, of course, in a body positive manner. not self-deprecating and just, and you want to make sure you're assuming the best for yourself. Self-care.
Okay. I mean, self-deprecating, like with painful sincerity, like, self-deprecating is a language that all females speak. So even that is like, take that with a grain of salt. It's like true self-deprecation when you're looking at yourself and you have a real dislike.
Maybe that's more like self-loathing than self-deprecating. A little bit more intense,
so
meaning
strong.
where it would be negative for someone instead of having a positive body image.
Okay. Wait, I also want to say about the adaptive appearance, investing in your look. I had just been thinking this morning, I think, about a topic that I think we should make a podcast, which was about fashion. Seriously, fashion. For men and women, because I do think there's been, with the Grammys that just, it's the Grammys, right? I'm not like good with pop culture. Anyway, it was so
just not good.
Yeah. And gentlemen used to wear hats. I don't know. I think that it's worth discussing what were the reasons why there's been this laxity in how we dress and what it means about how we feel about ourselves and about each other. So, let me know if that's something you are interested in. I'm interested in. And by proxy, John's also interested.
I'm automatically interested.
Anywho, go ahead, babe.
For people that are listening, always reminding everyone that you can go to our Substack and see all of these notes. And there's a lot of detail in these notes beyond what it is that we even wind up having time to say here on the podcast. So it allows people to go back and really kind of dig in a little bit more. One of the things that I have on here is the body esteem scale. So there's an actual tool that's used in psychology to be able to determine where you're at with that. I don't want to go through the whole thing, but there are 3 key sections that you can sort of categorize men and women through. So sexual attractiveness, their weight concerns, and then their physical condition. And then it has different things like body scent and your breasts and, sex drive and those kind of things would be related to sexual attractiveness. Weight concern is obviously your waist, your thighs, the hips, etc. And then physical condition, actual physical stamina, muscle strength, these kinds of things. And then men, interestingly, of course, have a different assessment. It's for them, their 3 main categories of how they would see their body esteem is going to be based on sexual attractiveness, but different than what a woman would be thinking. Meaning their parameters for that are going to be maybe different. For them, it's about upper body strength. Do they have the muscular strength or not? Biceps, body build, those kind of things. And then their physical condition, there's far more things associated with physical condition for men. Their stamina, their weight, their physique, their agility, more about, can they perform or not physically? All of that ties into their sense of body self-esteem. So,
and I do want to point out that a person can want to, like I was saying about constantly wanting to improve, a person can, and I would say should, always be working to improve themselves. So you might be taking this test for yourself and say, oh, wow, I have a really low level of esteem in my butt muscles, lack thereof, but still have a very high sense of self. So what do? Oh, I've identified, it's just like goal setting. I've identified an area that I'd like to improve. I would like to have stronger nalgas. So I'm going to work on that.
What's a nalga? What is that?
Butt cheek.
Butt cheek in Spanish, okay.
Anyway, I just want to make sure that's out there because I don't want people to take the test and be like, oh, this says I don't love myself.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So take the test. I think it's worth looking into.
It's fun,
that.
yeah.
So you had alluded to this earlier, that where these main issues are coming from, interestingly, most of the body, and I would say women are going to have more body esteem issues in general than men do, but men have them as well.
Why do women have more? Why do you think?
I think it's social pressure just in general. I think women create their sense of self through their beauty identity. Their identity of beauty is more so than for men. Men, it's women's value is often based on that. Society's idea, women's personal idea, their values based on their beauty. For men, it's their competence. So the guys will, it's the dad bod kind of concept is easier for a man because, well, he's successful. He does this, he does that. So he's got a little bit of a gut. So what? He's a billionaire, so you can sort of get past
different
it.
Currency.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess women also show their bodies more.
Like Leonardo DiCaprio is going to go show his body and he can look like, a little bit slovenly here. As he goes through body transformations all the time, but he doesn't care. And he's out there on his yacht and not looking so great in terms of these kind of standards.
And also I think women go through more dramatic body changes than most men too, perhaps. Like, guys tend to stay playing longer into their life. I don't know. Just curious what you thought about that. All right, go ahead.
So let's assume that most of these issues are with women.
Yeah.
It is the mothers it's their constant criticism of their own body in front of their children, particularly in front of their daughters.
Yeah. Yeah.
That most of it comes from that.
I just posted something the other day on the sex docs that was, I think it was a video. I already forgot. It was literally like a day ago. Anyway, that said something like, the cells in your body, there's X amount of cells in your body and they are receiving these messages, these electronic messages on the constant. And those electronic messages are dramatically influenced by your inner dialogue.
Yes.
So you can go to the gym, you can go to the spa, you can get your brain worked on, you can work on making money. But if your inner dialogue is constantly feeding yourself negativity, then the cells themselves aren't healthy.
Yeah, it's the unconscious, the subconscious or unconscious will pick up on those messages and believe you. Like whatever you say.
Well, especially if they're saturated in them.
Right, because the subconscious, unconscious doesn't have a filter. So it will just go, okay, if that's what you're saying, okay. The discernment has to come through our conscious mind and our will.
And this thing about moms, especially with their daughters, there was a social media trend at least a year ago, although I would say it's been going on for longer, with all the pop culture saying things like, don't tell your daughters that they're beautiful. Tell them that they're smart. Don't tell your daughters that they're pretty. Tell them that they're kind. And I always remember reading that going, tell your daughters all of that. Like, how stupid is that? I'm constantly showering my children, and you are as well. Actually, we all are. We're showering them with verbal accolades. And it's not a gold medal just because they participated. It's like, really true things that are genuine. You have beautiful hair. You have strong legs. You have, look how pretty. Oh, you look great in that outfit. I think that's as important as telling them when they performed well or when they were kind or they shared. I think all of that. So for those moms out there who think that, I shouldn't tell my kids, especially my daughters, how pretty they are, that's baloney. If they're not hearing it at home when they're little, can you imagine how hungry they're going to be for the first person that tells them they're pretty?
Sure. And parents are setting up that inner dialogue. I mean, that's part of it. Let me just say something to all the guys out there. There's very few things that are wonderful in this world than to have your young daughters compliment you. And they certainly do that with me.
They love their dad. They're like in love with their dad.
And that's, you were saying that before. I really wanted to emphasize that. We have in our family a culture of compliment.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to me to see that. I didn't exactly grow up that way, let's say. So to see a culture of compliments coming from between siblings, because I definitely didn't grow up that way. So seeing that amongst them and just how we feed that back and forth. And again, having that come back to us as parents. I mean, they're constantly complimenting you.
Yeah, they are. They're so critiquing. I mean, it's very honest, right?
Yeah, very honest, right? Yes.
My one kid was like, "Mama," like you said about my, wow, your arms are feeling stronger. And then she worked her way down. She's like, "This needs work." It was so like free from judgment. She was just saying, like, matter of fact, like, you're doing good, but keep at it. And I think complimenting your children, complimenting strangers. They definitely hear me say all the time, like, oh my God, I love, it's such a generosity of self to be comfortable telling others that they're great is so important.
See, maybe this is back to the broadly conceptualizing beauty, that you're seeing it and then consciously and unconsciously, but consciously recognizing it and saying
and
that
celebrating
it.
Yeah.
And that you have to have your own sense of self-esteem to do that. But when you do that, that also
it feeds
your own self-esteem.
And we're talking about verbal praise, but this is physical as well. Like they're always seeing us hug and kiss, and we're always touching them as well. We're always hugging and kissing them. They hug each other. They always give each other a kiss goodbye if they're going to be extended periods of time. And that's important too, because being comfortable with touch is something a lot of adults aren't good with, but that's one of the ways that you show each other that you like each other. Like, I love you, but I also like you, and I like the way you look.
Right. I want to come back to that. I just realized at this moment, because I was thinking about this earlier. I was saying about the siblings. We didn't have a whole huge amount of compliments, let's say, between siblings growing up for me. But where I got it from a lot, who adored me for sure, without question, was my mother. So I got a lot of that positive feedback right
still
away.
Does.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah,
she should.
That was what sort of fed me personally. But not everybody has this full family feel of everyone's complimenting everyone, and we've created that culture. I'm very personally proud of that, and I think that feeds into what we're talking about right now. Among
we know it does.
Things.
I mean, it tells us. The statistics tell us, and also like anecdotal evidence tells you.
Well, sort of moving on, but related to that. So the strongest predictor of anorgasmia, which is the fancy word for not being able to have an orgasm, is body image issues. And that would mostly, again, be with women, because women in general have more of the general hang up on achieving orgasm than men do. So that is number one predictor.
Yeah. And again, if someone is telling you positive things about the way you look, you believe it.
There was a study, the Archives of Sexual Behavior, this is all the way back in 2009, where they actually showed an association between a woman's body esteem and their sexual desire. And these were young college women. It was the first study to actually show that. So they would show them like a standardized erotic stimulus, and then they were able to sort of measure things based on questionnaires and other things to see how they responded. And then based on their self-esteem, as measured by a lot of these other tools we were just talking about, they were able to relate, the worse your body esteem issue was, the less of the reaction to the erotic stimulus.
And again, this is actually independent of how the people look. Well, first of all, beauty from culture to culture can be very different.
Yes.
Anyway, I thought of a story, but I decided to edit it. So it can be very different from culture to culture.
Why are you editing it? Don't edit, or edit it more. No? You're good.
No, I had a friend in high school, really good friend. He was like, and he was the funniest guy. And then he was like, you'd be, what did he say? You'd be like the perfect girl if you were a little thicker. I remember being like, are you serious? But the reason I think it's important is because, again, this isn't about features, right? Depends on where you are. Maybe big eyes, small eyes, bigger butt, smaller butt, big breast, smaller breast, like for women, and for men, the same thing. This is not the point. The point is, do you feel beautiful about yourself? And do you work on keeping yourself beautiful by staying healthy? Because there are definitely plenty of women that one would say are the epitome of gorgeous, and they're unhappy with themselves. So it's a facade.
Marilyn Monroe was one of them.
Right. Marilyn Monroe was one of them. So, yeah.
Well, wrapping all of this up, how do we improve it?
Well, like we were talking about, start with your kids. And when you're starting with your kids, I think you will recognize patterns that you have towards yourself. Like as a mom, when you have children and you tell your boy and your girl how great they are, you start to think, huh, that's funny. How often do I say that to myself? Or parents didn't say that to me. And then it does inspire a lot of women, this patient that we talked about in the beginning, it does inspire people to go down that path of self-exploration on what is their self-worth and their body image.
That's a great point. I think just in general, when you go to heal others, that process often helps to heal yourself. And, when I went into massage therapy, I was very young, but there was many, many people in my class. The majority of them, really, frankly, were the people with a second career. And they had a lot of their own wounds, and they were there to heal themselves. They were there to learn this skill, to work on other people, to help them so it could in turn help themselves. But even though I was young and I wasn't really thinking about it that way, maybe that's what I was doing. Maybe that's the natural path of the healer, is to also heal themselves through that process. And we know that. So anybody can do that. You don't have to be a massage therapist or a doctor or anything to just try to help somebody else, because that in turn helps you.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So yes, it starts early. I really love this one. This is, let's talk about exercise. We kind of started talking about this as soon as we started this episode. Really, look, I mean, how many times can we talk about exercise in general, how incredibly important it is, not only for sexuality, but for longevity and the things that we care about as physicians and what we're constantly telling our patients. There's very few biomarkers and predictors for health and longevity that's better than the idea of exercise and enhancing yourself that way.
And, exercise, even the word itself, this is one of those places where you can start with your kids. I was having this amazing body work done yesterday. And in conversation, I made the comment of, when do we start replacing the word play with exercise? Because really it's the same thing. So the more you teach your kids how physical activity is so great and fun, and it's play and stay with, especially during adolescence, parents, that's when you really got to stick to the kids. During adolescence is when the things they even seemed to love above all else start to slide away.
And there's plenty of studies on this too. When parents exercise with their children, the likelihood of them exercising into adulthood goes up
much
dramatically.
Higher.
So what we're talking about here is just exercise. In general, we always want to get on the soapbox in general about exercise, but more specifically, it's going to improve your mood. It's going to allow you to want to do it. You want to get into having sex. It's helping you physically, but it's helping with endorphins and helping just get in the mood to want to have sex.
Yeah, we've mentioned this before. I always say, and I tell patients, I'm like, there's one of the best foreplays you can do is to work out together.
Yeah.
Like, think about that. You're flexing your muscle. You're putting yourself in these positions that are highlighting your strength. You're sweating. It's making you feel good because the endorphins are pumping. You're together. You're usually spotting each other. I mean, sexy.
And the other thing that winds up helping with couples with that, all of those things, and because that sounded pretty hot to me, but also it winds up, you're accomplishing something together. And that's something that I've just seen in our relationship. We do so many things together from a work standpoint, that because we're accomplishing something together, that's super sexy. That it winds up, I'm very attracted to you in those moments of accomplishing and getting something done.
Yeah.
Whether it's something with the kids, or I didn't tell you this, but just when we were coming over here today to film, and we work so well together.
Yeah.
So when we were in sync and we were like organizing our clothes and we're doing all these things and boom, 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 and get everything done without even saying anything. I don't know. It's very sexy.
It's like, yes, it is. Is it called the Michelangelo effect? Is that what I've, again, seen on Instagram? It's like my new Encyclopedia Britannica. I think it's the Michelangelo effect, that one of the predictors of success in couples is how much the partner supports and promotes your success.
Yes.
So if your goals are aligned and you're doing, it's like a double whammy, right? Like, we're helping each other, we're helping ourselves, and we're helping us as a unit. Again, sexy.
Hot. So back to these are all very related segues,
Uh-huh.
but exercise is really important. Gets the blood flowing. Endorphins. You're feeling like you're accomplishing something together. So exercise together. I think it's a good idea.
I say exercise together.
Good idea. I think we should. You want to go exercise now? Fix the anatomy. Sometimes, so that was kind of full circle back to what I was saying when we first started, that sometimes there are some things that we can do directly. Hopefully this isn't just simply saying, well, body image issues, but there are things that could certainly help. Number one, just oftentimes, absolutely. And it's what we do generally on a day-to-day basis. So of course, nutrition for sex, the usual suspects like zinc and B vitamins, but I really wanted to emphasize nitric oxide for both men and women.
Especially since not a lot of people know it.
Yeah. And it's really easy. It's easy to measure it.
Yes.
There's salivary sticks that you can do to be able to measure your nitric oxide levels. It's very easy to supplement that. And it's one of the mainstays for all of our patients. Mm-hmm. Balance your hormones. That's for us pretty obvious. Testosterone probably being one of the biggest ones.
Of course.
We look at oxytocin. I think this is the oxytocin hormone would be interesting to say here because we're talking about body image and that sort of sense of vulnerability as it relates to that and all the things that, in the past that might have led to why somebody has a negative body image. Oxytocin really helps to open you up for both men and women, particularly women. When I think oxytocin is the right hormone for women, I go through a series of asking certain questions that are really questions surrounding them shutting down emotionally with the world, with their friends, with their partner, with their kids. They just kind of shut down and they just don't give a shit anymore. And oxytocin changes that, Yeah.
What's funny about oxytocin is that we usually associate it with a tenderness and lovingness towards others, like your mate or your newborn baby. But it's that kind of loving where you feel so good about it. Like you take the oxytocin, and part of the reason it helps so much in bonding is because it makes you so comfortably vulnerable, which is vital for bonding.
And therefore vital for sexuality. There can be vaginal issues. There can be laxity.
Anatomy is anatomy.
Sure.
So like you said, fix it.
And that, yes. And so O-shot can help with that.
Good.
If guys have issues with erectile dysfunction, there's definitely things to help with that. Lots of things. And then even with penis size. So penis size, again, this can be very, it's interesting with the surveys they've done with penis size with women. The range of what it is that they say that they like is very broad.
You're talking about what women say
they like? What women say they like and what they prefer in terms of penis size is really, really broad. You would think it would just kind of come into this standard number, and guys are always looking for this, like, what's the number that all these women out there want? And it really just isn't one number. With that said, there are generalities and sort of an average mean of what they say, but it's somewhere as low as 3 inches all the way up to 9 inches. But most of the time it's hitting in and around maybe 5 or 6 about what women are saying they would prefer and that they like.
Which is lower than what men think women want. But here's the thing that men must remember, especially when you're in a committed monogamous relationship, is that the number in length, girth, etc., that the female desires is going to be what's most comfortable for her anatomy. So that's usually a great thing to do together. The woman's getting an O-shot, the man's getting some fallofill. So what that's doing is that's helping to tighten the vagina
while he's
and increasing the sensitivity, while the man is increasing the girth of his penis. And I think girth is more important than length, right? Is that one?
Generally speaking.
Yeah. So that's, I don't know, again, cool things to do together.
Right. So, and there's ways to be able to help is the point. So some of the other best practices, of course, I think this is really important. You got to believe your partner when they tell you that you're attractive. It's really common to hear like, you're just saying that, you don't really believe.
Oh my God, after a while, that's so annoying. Yeah, I mean, I'm not even a guy and I feel like I'd be like, enough.
Well, it's interesting. You're probably assuming that this is mostly women that would be saying that. It's probably true.
I think it's mostly, well, I don't know. I work mostly with women, so I see everything as like, you know, I think women complain a lot about that idea of um, maybe not believing when other people tell them that they're beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I think another best practice would be learn to let go, trust your partner, get into a place where you can trust your partner, whatever it means to build that up.
Right.
But if you have the trust, then you can let go. We're back to this idea of oxytocin and being vulnerable while you're open. It's really, really important.
The more you let someone love you, the more you let them love you, the easier it is to be filled. And then in turn, the easier it is to love well.
Mm. And do you think part of that is through communication? Because that would be one other thing that I would say, that people need to communicate when it comes to their sense of what it is that they want and need sexually, body esteem, whatever.
Well, we talk a lot about that. I mean, we think obviously there's many ways to communicate. There's touch and humor, but really just sometimes flat out talking or physically showing.
Mm-hmm.
Hugging, grabbing, pinching, petting, the things that you love about your mate is incredibly reassuring. Now, pinching someone's tricep meat, that I've coined the flapsep, not loving.
You don't like when I do that?
I don't like when anybody does that. I freaking hate it.
It's like an extra handle. I don't know. Look, to sort of summarize this whole thing, and one of the most important indicators for sexual satisfaction, without question, is just simply relationship satisfaction. And we have seen that so many times. I don't know if you need to run a research study for that. It's pretty obvious when patients come in, and we know that ultimately, like when we have couples come in and you sit there and just kind of watch them, their dynamic and how they're bickering and what they're saying to one another, even right in front of a stranger, in front of the doctor, you know that there's a fundamental problem with the relationship. So inevitably, that's why they're sitting there saying to us, well, we have a fundamental problem with our sexual satisfaction, and et cetera.
Yeah.
So, I do think at that point, the hormones and those kind of things help. I think the fact that they're just there admitting it and talking it through is like the big part of getting them to a point of healing and then figuring it out. But if people want to have better sexual satisfaction, have an improvement in your relationship, and do what it takes to improve your relationship.
And have more sex. I mean, we always summarize.
Egg, right?
You have to really practice, right? So if what you want is to have a loving connection with your husband, then practice being loving and connecting. You will inspire him to do the same, and vice versa. And listen to that other person's love language. Like, what makes one woman or one man feel desirable isn't going to be true for all men and women. So, yeah, I think, that good relationship, good sex makes you feel good about yourself. Ta-da.
Are you liking what you're hearing? Do you want to hear more? Do you want others to benefit from all of this great content? Do you want to ask us a question? Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. You can find links to all of our social media channels, all of our featured articles, basically everything right on our link tree at Longevity Protocol Pod. If you want to learn a little bit about our personal lives, be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Sex Docs. Here's where you can comment and ask questions that we'll directly address right there in our videos. Be sure to subscribe to our Substack. That's where you can find far more information about our protocols on longevity, health, sexuality, including the notes for today's episode. Finally, if you're ready to make a change in your health and you want to see us as a new patient right here in Scottsdale, Arizona, please inquire through our private practice website, hormone-zone.com.